Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sunny Go One Piece podcast. And on this episode, we're going to be getting into episodes 520 through 522, which will cover manga chapters 600 through 602. And the moment we had been all waiting for so long is finally upon us, as the Straw Hats are finally reunited and ready to continue their journey towards the One Piece in the New World half of the Grand Line. So, synopsis. With the word out now that there were fake Straw Hats impersonating them, but the real ones have indeed returned, the Marines are now hot on their trail to prevent them from setting sail, but the crew now stronger than ever, and with the help of some friends that they've made along the way, they get ready to set sail for the New World half of the Grand Line. Alright, so differences. There are quite a few differences found in these three episodes. So first off, in the opening scene of episode 520, we see a bit more of Brook's show, including a really weird scene of Brook drinking water. But to me, it looks like he's pissing himself, since he has that strange habit of being particularly messy when it comes to food and drinks. It seems appropriate, but I do find it amusing that we see the stagehand just kind of standing there in silence watching Brook do all this while he's pouring water into his mouth or his face. It's not quite clear to me what is actually happening here. But it's obviously kind of a reference to how a lot of artists just kind of want to calm themselves before they go on the stage, that you see in a lot of biopics and stuff like that. One difference I forgot to point out last episode is that Caribou and Koribu are introduced with blood already all over them, particularly their collars and their shirts. So in the manga, you actually do see them with blood already on them. In the anime, we don't actually see the blood until they actually stab the Marine that they catch trying to spy on them. So that's a difference that I forgot in the last episode, but also kind of applies to this episode as well. In the anime, we also get to see Brook perform his final song, New World, as well as flashbacks to a few key moments of the last 2 years during his time with the Long Arm tribes as they build up his fame as a rock star. And then when Sentomaru smashes in the fake Luffy in the head, in the anime, he only uses one arm, while in the manga, he's using two arms for some reason. I don't know why this was changed, to be quite honest. It doesn't make any sense, and I really do not know what if that was a mistake or an actual intentional choice. It seems like it's almost a mistake, like they just misread the manga or something, because it just seems really weird because it doesn't do anything. But anyways, the next one is when they're getting ready to set sail towards the end of this trio of episodes, the giant birds that help Chopper get to the Sunny, they're also seen attacking one of the Marine ships to kind of slow them down by cutting a huge gash through their sail. And then similarly, in that same scene, Sanji is seen trying to impress Nami by kicking the cannonball, but then he starts to profusely bleed from his nose again, which I will talk about later more. But yeah, there's also another scene of Sanji kind of fainted because of the nosebleed, but then he's woken up shuddering to Tibony's wink later on when they're seen helping the Straw Hats escape as well by distracting the Marines. Those are most of the bigger changes that I saw. There are definitely a couple other ones where they changed the sequencing of a couple scenes like they have with the last three episodes. But yeah, with that though, let's move into my thoughts on the episode. So we begin with Koribu and Caribou, who are a very strange duo just based on their design and just the overall creepiness. It's pretty evident that these guys are villains. But one thing I forgot that was part of Caribou's character was that how he prays to some god for forgiveness when he kills people. But I'm pretty sure this aspect of Caribou is kind of just tossed to the wayside, since I completely forgot about this aspect of them. It is still curious how we have another character that kind of prays to a god, which is something that Oda never includes just randomly. But to be quite honest, I don't know how to read this because it's never really brought up again as far as I remember. And Caribou is kind of a character that recurs pretty regularly, I would say, throughout the story, even as recently as the current arc in the story, way later on down the line. I may have to go back and really examine Caribou as a character in more depth at some point, once we're at a point in the series where he's had a few more appearances. Now, it turns out that all these pirates are gathered here by the fake Luffy to find the real Nami, Usopp, and Luffy and take revenge without knowing that Luffy is actually in disguise among them inadvertently. See, now Luffy, for some reason, I have an easier time buying that he would in fact mistake Zoro and Sanji for the fake ones, but just barely. Even then, it's pretty ridiculous and unbelievable, but at least he thinks that maybe they're also in disguise, unlike Chopper, who just straight up just mistakes them completely. But I do like how he comments, wow, you guys are far more friendly with each other now, which shows that even Luffy is aware of just how contentious their sort of relationship is, which I do find pretty funny and something that I never really thought about. As much as I said I don't necessarily like Frankie's redesign, I do love everyone's reaction to his new look. And Usopp asking the right questions, like how he's going to be able to do any delicate work with his hands now that he's got these big, huge hulking ones. And the solution to it is absurd, but makes a ton of sense. As a smaller hand comes out of the bigger one's palm. And it looks ridiculous, but it makes a lot of sense. And also, like I mentioned in the last podcast that Frankie's hair can change at any point, he shows off that his body can now change hairstyles with the press of a button, more specifically the press of his nose, and we do see for a split second that he can regrow his original hairstyle. And also, I didn't mention this in the differences section, but one small difference is that you get to see a couple more hairstyles here than you did in the manga. Now, getting back to Brook, we get an epic moment during his live show as it's raided by the Marines now that they figured out that Brook is the humming Brook of the Rumbar Pirates and part of the Straw Hats. Brook now gets his Luffy will be the Pirate King declaration moment to ring in the grand return of Luffy and the Straw Hats. And while this is definitely one of the more understated ones, it still is a pretty awesome moment hearing Brook be the one to announce the return of the Straw Hats and confidently declare to everyone that Luffy is still alive and is the one who will become the Pirate King. And I still get chills watching any moment where a Straw Hat declares their complete faith in Luffy, and this is no different. Now that the Marines have started to mobilize, and with many of the Straw Hats gathered, Frankie updates Sanji of the situation, and when he goes to explain the situation to Zoro, it's pretty funny because he talks to him like he's 3. And this was honestly hilarious seeing Sanji and Zoro just stuck together and them bickering like this, with Sanji just using one words to describe the situation. This scene is pretty funny. And speaking of funny, this whole situation with the fake Luffy is hilarious yet exciting because the story and Oda does such a good job of creating sort of this anticipation of Luffy finally revealing himself, that he is in fact the real one and is standing right there. And you want nothing more than to have Luffy put all these people in their places, but it eventually turns into an all-out battle with the fake Straw Hat recruits and the Marines, while the fake Straw Hats themselves are just kind of cowering while they have everyone else who's clearly stronger than them do their dirty work. And they get a little ahead of themselves as they start boasting about making anyone that kills the most Marines as part of the main crew until the pacifistas show up. And let's go. At this point, the fake Luffy starts to flee like a little chicken until Sentomaru and 2 pacifistas roll right up to him. And of course, Sentomaru can clearly see through this charade and immediately bashes this dude's head in. And it was a little disappointing to not see Luffy, giving the fake Straw Hat and the fake Luffy his comeuppance. But this was ultimately also very satisfying of an outcome as well, because Sentomaru, despite being a Marine and an antagonist, shows actually some genuine respect for Luffy as he yells out, "Straw Hat isn't scum like you," which actually kind of caught me off guard because I never expected Sentomaru to have that much reverence for Luffy despite being enemies, and certainly didn't get that kind of feeling in their last encounter on Sabaody. But this has me thinking that maybe Sentomaru is actually one of the good Marines, and I instantly started liking him way more after this moment. We then learn what this fake Luffy's real name is, and he's a weak pirate named Demaro Black, only worth 26 million berries, which is lower than Luffy's initial bounty of 30 million berries. So kind of a translator's note here. One thing about Demaro Black's name is how it's translated, because there's that ever confusing nature of the R and L sounds in Japanese and them being translated. And there are some places that translate it Demelo Black instead of Demaro Black, which is understandable when it was just the manga. But in the anime, we get to see how it's spelled through PX5's HUD, and it clearly says Demaro Black with the R. Now, obviously, the anime isn't the be-all, end-all, as we have seen even just as recently as Usopp's spelling in the We Go opening, which does get fixed in these episodes going forward, by the way. But yeah, in any case, I still refer to him as Demaro Black because that seems to be the consensus translation that most people seem to accept. I think it sounds better too, because the R sound, as Dwight says in The Office, is much more of a darker sound. That's why it's not muck-duck instead of murder. Anyways. And another sort of translator's note is that his epithet, three-tongued or Sanmaijita, is a play on the Japanese phrase that a deceitful liar is referred to as a two-tongued person or a nimaijita. And which is kind of similar to how in English we have the phrase of a person being called two-faced to refer to someone who is deceitful and a liar. But in Demaro's case, he's three-tongued just to kind of further emphasize just how deceitful he is in nature. And then we get the long-awaited moment where the pacifista fires upon the real Luffy, and he has no choice but to reveal himself. And it's so freaking cool seeing everyone freak out as We Go begins to blare in the background. Then we get one of the coldest moments of the series as the pacifista fires multiple laser beams at Luffy and he just dodges them like it's nothing, and even has the confidence to just whisper "too slow" under his breath as he shows off his newfound mastery of observation haki. But then we get another contender for one of the more satisfying Luffy punches as he goes into gear second, but not in his iconic squatting pose, but this time he just does it effortlessly by just extending one arm, showing how perhaps he's trained himself to be able to use gear second more efficiently and not be such a burden on his body. But with gear second on, he soars above PX5 and just absolutely obliterates this thing in one hit. And this was it. This is what we've been waiting for. Like, this is all that we needed to see just to see how much stronger Luffy has gotten in the 2 years. And 2 years ago, it took all 9 Straw Hats to barely take out one pacifista. But now, he alone can one-shot it. And not just barely either. There is no doubt that this pacifista is absolutely wrecked. Like, it just gets his face punched in and the ground craters and then it explodes. And I don't know how you can watch this scene and not get hyped and just cheer. Like, the catharsis after witnessing Luffy so devastatingly fall to these things the last time 2 years ago to now completely dominating it with ease is just so amazing. And I love that Luffy, as he's running away, kind of in a friendly way, says that he has a feeling that they'll meet again. And by they, he means he and Sentomaru. And honestly, this is a foreshadow that we don't actually get fulfillment until just recently. Like, this chapter and episode aired around 2011, but this foreshadow doesn't come back into play until 2023 and 2024. So it's a long time, but it's kind of funny that Oda threw this in there, especially now considering where we are reading in the Egghead Island arc. However, this moment gets even better as the real Zoro and Sanji finally also reunite with Luffy. And of course, to finish off showing off the monster trio, Sentomaru sends his second pacifista, PX7, after them, but Zoro and Sanji now get to show off their newfound strength as well, as the two of them combine to take out one with ease with a dual hit, and it's so cool seeing these two just destroy another pacifista like it's nothing. I mean, the pacifistas to the Straw Hats are basically just cannon fodder at this point because it's not even close. And I think one of the cooler things about this scene is seeing the reaction of all the other pirates and watching them freaked out and legit scared of the Straw Hats. Like, they're part of the big boys now. And remembering back to like how we and the Straw Hats, and by we I mean the audience or the reader, we're scared of opponents like Crocodile or Moria or any of the other Shichibukai or any of the big bad villains like NL. But now the world is treating the Straw Hats like this, and it's really satisfying and cool to see, like, the world basically elevating the Straw Hats and Luffy up to that kind of a level in terms of notoriety and fear. And it's really cool to see. Luffy then senses Rayleigh nearby and turns to him once again, declaring that he's gonna do it and become the Pirate King. And this scene is so amazing. But the anime, for some reason, neuters it a bit, because in the manga, when it cuts to Rayleigh, he's seen tearing up. But in the anime, they don't have this for whatever reason. And I think this was a huge mistake and a missed opportunity. First of all, it just shows how much Rayleigh cares about and has grown to love Luffy over the time together training. But it's also heavily implied that watching Luffy declare this with his former captain and friend's straw hat on his head, it reminded him of Roger, which gets him particularly emotional that there is finally someone worthy of carrying on his beloved captain's will. And it's a beautiful scene that for some reason Toei decided to change for no reason, I feel like. And I really don't understand why this was changed. Like, it's a very small change, but I feel like it has a very big difference in terms of how you view this scene and how you view Rayleigh and Luffy's relationship. And I thought it was a really good moment to see Rayleigh actually get emotional over seeing Luffy finally, at this point, ready to carry on his captain's dream. It's just really strange. I just don't know why they changed it, and I don't like it at all. But yeah, Rayleigh, as he encourages Luffy to reach for the top, he steps in to stop the Marines in epic fashion as he slashes a line in the ground and threatens the Marines not to cross that line. But as we see, it's not just Rayleigh that is there to help the Straw Hats, it's everyone. As we see Perona here helping them by using her negative ghosts on the Marines. It's also made abundantly clear that the reason Zoro was the first to arrive was because Perona made sure he got there. And I think it's pretty sweet that Perona still cares about Zoro. And it seems like they've developed almost like a brother and sister relationship in the 2 years. And while I know there are a lot of people that want to ship them, I just don't see it. Like, even when she says goodbye and she's like hugging the mini Kumashi, like, I feel like, again, they don't show her eyes or really any of her facial features. And so I can kind of see why people think that maybe Perona has a crush on Zoro or something like that. But I don't know. I just never really saw it that way. But, you can let me know what you think and what you prefer. Now, moving from Zoro to Sanji. Seriously, Sanji in this scene is just beyond gross. Like, the way he's just lusting after and smelling Perona is just so off-putting. And it's such a shame, too, because Sanji's such a cool character, but he is just beyond just egregiously bad in this, like, section of the story. This also doesn't help that scene because it's followed by Brooke being a pervert and asking Nami to see her panties again, which I also hate. Additionally, when Sanji sees Nami and Robin for the first time a little bit later, he has this profuse nosebleed, and at first you think this is like a visual gag that has no bearing on Sanji's actual well-being. But this turns out to be very much happening in reality. He's actually bleeding that much. And this aspect of Sanji will go on to play an actual role in the upcoming arc, which is just stupid as hell. Like, there are a few things that Oda has written that I hate, and this is one of them, and it's definitely my least favorite aspect of One Piece, is this whole Sanji perverse nosebleed subplot that happens throughout this arc. And I just cannot for the life of me ever get on board with this, and I see almost no redeeming qualities about this sort of character trait and subplot. Thankfully, it doesn't last beyond this arc, but I mean, he's still perverse, but the nosebleeding thing thankfully stops. But anyways, along with Perona, the giant birds from Torino Island that Chopper was with also come to help and take the monster trio to the Sunny. And for the first time since episode 404, or 2 years in real time, we get to see the Straw Hat crew all back together. However, they don't really have much time to catch up as they need to get the heck out of there with the Marines in hot pursuit. We also get to see a whole host of the Straw Hats' new allies that they trained with during their 2 years, like Hancock blocking the Marines, And this is where the crew is introduced to Boa Hancock and are surprised to learn that Luffy is friends with her, including Sanji's incredibly jealous reaction to being sent to an all-female island while he had to be sent to Kamabaka Island. But we also see Heracles from Usopp's training brought a bunch of giant bugs from Bowen Island to help see him off, as well as Herodes and the wizards of Witheria causing it to rain all over the Marines' munitions, rendering them useless to help Nami out. Later, we see the Kamabaka ladies also helping to stall the Marines, and we even see Tibony wink at Sanji, kind of mimicking Hancock's wink to Luffy, to which Sanji kind of gets this cold shiver from sensing it. I never tire of Luffy, seeing Luffy and Zoro just being stupid, and this is one of the pretty more minor ones, but I do like that moment where Nami is explaining how the coding process works, to which we see Luffy and Zoro very seriously answer, "Oh, I see," with everyone, including us the viewer, knowing full well that neither of them understood anything that Nami said in the slightest, with Nami interjecting, "Yeah, you guys don't understand." And it's just I think what kills me is just how serious they are. They're trying to understand, and they're just not. You can clearly see the gears not turning in their heads. But yeah, this is it. They're finally back together and ready to take on the world once again as they set sail onto the long-awaited Fishman Island. And this is such an exciting time in the series to look forward to, as it's a new beginning and the anticipation of seeing this new and improved Straw Hat crew face those same challenges that broke them and beyond as they explore the crazy new islands of the new world. So look forward to getting into that starting next episode. But yeah, thanks for listening. And if you did enjoy this, send me a like or comment. And if you want to join me on this journey of rewatching One Piece, please consider subscribing. Check out my Instagram and Twitter/X account at SunnyGo Podcast for updates when I post new episodes. And as always, I wanted to thank you for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. No spoiler section on this episode, but stay safe out there, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Bye!